1-0 this week, 1-0 in the month of September, and 1-0 on the 2022 season. Once again, Tim Maiden, Marty Leap from BlackShoeDiaries.com. Marty, good sir, how you feeling? Still alive over there?
Barely. That was that was stressful. That was stressful, let me tell you. But I definitely lost some faith at some points. But hey, in the end, Penn State does what good teams do. They found a way. You go on the road, a hostile environment to start the year, and you walk away victorious. And coming into this game, it didn't matter if Penn State won by 1 or Penn State won by 35. You just needed to win. And to the credit of Sean Clifford and the Nittany Lions, they needed that late drive they put together, and they found a way to win the game.
Indeed, we will very much dive into that. But before we do, I just want to thank all of you who have subscribed to our Penn State Voice of College Football channel. We had a goal of hitting 500 subscribers before the first game of the season. We are currently at 512. So thank you very much for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, if this is your first time actually watching us, welcome. This will be a weekly thing with Marty and I. On occasion, if one of us isn't available, we've got a couple of fine substitute hosts, Ellie Moretta Felice, who has hosted on here several times in the past, is also another guy who you might see on here. But we hope you enjoy the show, and if you like what you see, smash that like and subscribe button. Anyway, let's get right into it, Marty. I mean, I don't know about you, but for the longest time, I was thinking I was going to be doing this post-game show coming off a loss. I mean, it looked pretty bleak. Sean Clifford seemed like he was hobbled from getting hit in the leg early, like late in the first half, and just didn't quite seem as effective in the second half, and then threw an awful pick six, which he should have been hitting a wide open Mitchell Tinsley for a huge gain. And, it seemed like that was going to be enough for Purdue to win. But then, lo and behold, they run the 2-minute drill. Cliff finds Kevon Lee wide open in the end zone, little lob pass to score what ended up being the game-winning touchdown with 57 seconds to go. But, Mark, just your thoughts on the game in general. It was really just seemed like a crazy wild back and forth where, it just seemed there was times where you're just going from despair to hope, back to despair.
Yeah, it was like you said, when Cliff threw that pick six, I'm thinking like, oh my God, like you put together a great drive, the drive prior, Keandre Lambert-Smith, a lot of credit to him to overcome some drops earlier in the game, makes a catch, makes a guy miss, and just runs past Purdue's defense. You get a score, you take the lead, you force a 3-and-out, and you get a first down pretty quickly and a run by Kevon Lee, and then you have Mitchell Tinsley wide open the middle of the field. It's going to put you in field goal range. You think, all right, Clifford hits this, you go down, you score, you put the game on ice, and it was – and I'm sure Sean Clifford will tell you the same thing. Probably one of the worst throws he's ever made in his career as Penn State's quarterback. Overthrows a wide open Mitchell Tinsley. It's picked off. Purdue runs it back 70 yards. They take the lead. Penn State goes 3-and-out, and you're thinking, oh, boy, here we go. They're going to find a way to lose this game. And to their credit, they didn't. They got a stop on defense. They drew a couple penalties, forced a punt. And Sean Clifford led one of the most efficient drives you will ever see, capped off by that wheel route, which I will say, I was texting my buddy Joe earlier in the night, the wheel route, one of my favorite routes in all of football. You're almost always going to have a matchup nightmare. Hits Kevon Lee in the end zone. Penn State takes the lead. Purdue gets it about midfield. Chop Robinson gets a sack to seal it, and it's over. But, yeah, it was stressful. And I will say entering halftime, it was a game I thought was not going to be stressful. And, we'll get on this as we go on. But when Zakee Wheatley forced that fumble, Joey Porter Jr. recovered it, leads to a long touchdown pass to Brenton Strange right before the half. I'm thinking, you know what, Penn State's going to come out and probably not necessarily blow Purdue out, but win this thing without being super stressful. And it was not the case at all. But all the credit in the world. And as anyone who's listened to the show knows, I might be Sean Clifford's biggest opponent. I'm not a huge believer in Sean Clifford, but to his credit, puts together, maybe the best drive of his career at Penn State, leads the Nittany Lions down, he hits Kevon Lee in the end zone, and it was not easy. It was stressful. I threw my hat multiple times. God bless my wife on more than one occasion, came out and made sure I was okay in the living room. And in the end, Penn State's 1-0, and that's what matters. They're 1-0. They found a way to beat Purdue, and we will get into this again, but I do think this is a team with a lot of growth to be had. I think they can be a lot better a month from now than they are now. But all that matters is they played a very good Purdue team to start the season on the road, and they got a victory. And ultimately, that's all you can ask for. You start the road. You start your season with a road game against a conference opponent, and you start 1-0. You're always going to be happy, especially when that game is against a team coming off a 9-1 season and brings back their quarterback. Yeah, you're 1-0. That's all you can ask for right now. You're 1-0. And you know what? You go play Ohio next week, who might be the worst team you play all year, and you have weeks to get ready for Auburn.
Indeed. And I guess I'm seeing comments here about, Jeff Brom having poor time management. And there's also a comment I saw it about, here Rob saying teams that don't even try to run will never have success. And that's a segue into what, something that I noticed, probably you noticed, was Penn State early on and kind of throughout the game. They really tried to establish the run game, especially when, with a pair of stud freshmen in Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, who I must say, when they were in the game, it felt like a breath of fresh air seeing them actually, hit the hole quickly, not dancing around too much. Unfortunately, Singleton did not break one for a huge gain or for a touchdown like I hoped he would, but I feel it's coming sooner rather than later. Probably the same could be said for Katron Allen. Ironically, it was Kevon Lee who, we can't say he's the greatest runner on the team. I mean, of course, he came up with probably the most clutch play of the night. So hats off to Kevon. But on the other hand, Purdue, they did run with King Daru at times, and probably overall they might have been just about as effective as Penn State, but they didn't quite commit to it as much as Penn State did. And I can remember actually late in the game when they have the ball back, Purdue's the ball, they're trying to pick up a couple first downs, maybe run out the clock for like final 4 minutes, but they keep resorting to throwing the ball instead of trying to just pound it with King Daru, who's having a decent game. And, Marty, do you think that kind of hurts Purdue? You think they shot themselves in the foot with some poor clock management there?
Yeah, I definitely think it's the discussion. You look at that end drive there, and if you're Jeff Brom, I think you need to be running the ball, get Penn State to use their timeouts. I mean, albeit on Penn State's final drive, they're so efficient that the timeouts probably wouldn't have mattered. But yeah, it was, and it goes back to last year. We came into this game talking about Penn State's rushing attack and how they needed to prove, but Purdue ran the ball worse than Penn State last year. And we saw that tonight. Was Penn State's rushing attack great? No. Was it where we wanted to be? No. But you mentioned the freshman running backs. You can see it there with Penn State. You can see with Nick Singleton. His first collegiate carry, Singleton was one broken tackle away from going 97 yards for a touchdown. You can see where Penn State's running attack is going to get better as the year goes on. If you're Purdue, I think that's a major concern, especially as a Purdue team who, you probably view yourselves as legitimate contenders in the Big Ten West this season even after this loss tonight. But yeah, I've always said with Jeff Brom, I think he's a tremendous play caller. I've never thought he's a great head coach. And I think we saw that sometime with his play management, with his clock management. Yeah, I think if you're a Purdue fan, you have every right in the world to be frustrated with Brom and his clock management tonight.
And on the other hand, what did you think, Marty, of Penn State really trying to force a run game to go? Do you think they Do you think they did enough? Do you think they should have done a little bit less? Do you think it was just the right amount of mix of run pass?
I really didn't have an issue with it, especially early in the game when Nick Singleton and Craytron Allen, the true freshman, running the ball well. And we have seen this a lot, I feel, from James Franklin over the years, where he has an opponent early in the season where he knows he's more talented and kind of tries to force some things to happen play calling wise and has to scramble late in the game to survive with the victory. I do think Penn State's offensive line, for the most part, played okay tonight, especially considered how they have been in the past. There was a run by Kevon Lee, I think in the third or second quarter, where, and this is no knock on Kevon Lee, because again, we've said 100 times, he scored the game-winning touchdown tonight. We're not going to knock Kevon Lee. Without Kevon Lee catching that wheel route, Penn State does not win this game. But on that run, the line opened up a huge hole, and Lee didn't have the burst to hit it. If Nick Singleton, if Katron Allen is in the game, I think Penn State probably converts that in a first down. I will be curious to see moving forward, though. Tonight, we saw a lot of Singleton, we saw a lot of Allen, but late in the game when things got tight, when it was crunch time, we saw Kevon Lee on the field. So how long does that last for? I will say with Nick Singleton also that I thought he did really well tonight in pass protection. There was a pass route, I think on Penn State's like second or third drive of the game, where Singleton was kind of on an island protecting Clifford's backside on a blitzing linebacker. Did a great job picking up and allowed Cliff to hit the throw with the first down. So yeah, Penn State's running game tonight was not what you want, but I think there were a lot of good signs there. There's a lot of reasons for potential hope moving forward, largely because you have a lot of talented running backs. And I know if you listen to the show, you might think Kevon Lee's terrible, but he's not. Like, Kevon Lee averaged 5 yards per carry last year for Penn State. Made some big plays tonight, scored the game-winning touchdown. And when that is of your top three running backs, when that is the worst of your three options, like, you've got some serious talent at the position. So I do think the running game will be okay moving forward. But it wasn't what you wanted to see tonight, but I still think you can consider this a step in the right direction for Penn State running the football.
And moving on, to the passing attack, I guess we'll start first with the receivers, because holy cow, I did not think drops were going to be an issue coming this season, but I was having some PTSD to the 2018 season when they had a major case of the drops. And, thankfully, it did not end up biting them in the end. But, man, to see Parker Washington, of all people, drop, and then Keandre Lambert-Smith had, gosh, I lost count how many, but, credit to Keandre Lambert-Smith. He had a critical touchdown late in the second half, just catching a pass and, just down the middle and just blew past all the Purdue defenders for a touchdown. But man, you had those drops. Tyler Warren had a drop. And then the defensive side, you had a couple dropped interceptions, which, we'll get into the defense later on in the show. But, Marty, do you have concern that this is going to continue to be an issue going forward? Or do you think this is just, I don't know, maybe it just wasn't just a bit of an off night, first game jitters, what have you?
I would like to say it's not a concern, because ever since Taylor Stubblefield was hired coming out of the 2019 season, wide receiver has been such a position of strength for Penn State. Keandre Lambert-Smith had 3 real brutal drops tonight, but to his credit, when the team needed him most, he stepped up, made a catch, made a guy miss, and ran to the end zone for a touchdown. Tyler Warren had a real bad drop on just an absolutely beautiful throw by Drew Allar. And one thing I will say about Drew Allar, because again, anyone who's listened to us or has talked ad nauseum about Allar, man, he did not look overwhelmed tonight on his drive. He got Penn State to a second and short, made a just perfect throw that Warren dropped, and then made a bad read on a play where he should have run with it. But I'd rather have a quarterback who tries to make a big play through the air than immediately touch and run. So I think there's a lot of good stuff there with Laura. But yeah, if you look at the drops, Parker Washington, very uncharacteristic drop where I think his eye just got big. It was on a bubble screen where there was nobody even close to him. I think he saw those green yards and his eyes got big. Kendra Lambert-Smith had three drops, two of which were just brutal. But again, made up for with a very clutch touchdown. And you saw Tyler Ward make some drops. So, well, you don't want to see the drops. Since Taylor Stubblefield has been the wide receiver coach, drops have not been an issue. So combine that with being game one of the season, I'm not super concerned. I mean, obviously, we get 2, 3, 4 weeks in the year and they're still having issue with drops. I would be concerned then. But right now, that's not something that concerns me because I still think it's one game. Over the course of Taylor Stubblefield's 10 years wide receiver coach, drops have not been an issue. I think they'll be okay.
And you kind of segued into the quarterbacks too. Those of you who watched, of course, you saw for at least one series in the third quarter, Sean Clifford had to run back to the locker room. He did take a nasty hit to his bad leg, his leg that was in a brace late in the first half. Still led a touchdown drive to end the half. Just a brilliantly thrown ball to Brenton Strange, who took it deep for 77 yards to the end zone. But it was seeing Drew Allar in the game, though. I really felt like it was a complete 180 from when Taquan Roberson had to spell for Cliff last year at Iowa. I mean, the moment, the crowd, the nationally televised game, it was not too much for the kid. And I was very impressed with not only his arm, which, the right amount of power and accuracy, but his pocket presence. I mean, he knew when to sense the pressure. He knew when to move out of the pocket. There were, of course, some freshman mistakes that you expect. I think it was a third down pass. He threw one to, I think he was trying to find Mitchell Tinsley, kind of threw a little bit behind him, but he had plenty of real estate in front of him, and he could have just easily run. No, he probably could have just, slow jogged it for the first down because there was nobody within maybe 10 yards of him. And that's the thing. He's not as much a runner as Cliff is, but he's certainly shown he's mobile enough that if he gets pressured or if he sees some, wide open lane, he can pick up those yards. So that's something, he'll learn over time with experience. And frankly, my hope is, not to get ahead. We'll talk about Ohio later in the show, but my hope is we see Drew Allar again next week against Ohio in more than one series because Penn State builds up a big enough lead and you can get some key game experience. But I don't know about you, Marty, but I at least feel good about the post Sean Clifford future with Drew Allar. Do you know?
Absolutely. I mentioned it earlier in the show. His one drive, he did not necessarily look like a true freshman. You mentioned the play where he tried to force it in Tinsley. She was talking to run. That's something you can coach. And I would much rather have the quarterback who's trying to force the throw than the quarterback who immediately tucks and runs. If not for that drop by Tyler Warren on the drive where Drew Allar was in the quarterback, it's a real possibility Penn State scores on that drive. He looked composed. He'd not look overwhelmed by the moment, which, first game of your true freshman season on the road, blackout environment against a conference opponent, for you to look composed, that says something. And just when the ball leaves his hand, man, it's like watching like Max Scherzer or someone like that pitch. It's just when the ball comes out of his hand, it's different. It's special. You see the talent. And I think that's something that Penn State's going to have to battle all season is the fans calling for Drew Allar. In a lot of ways, I think Sean Clifford missing that series might have been the worst thing that could have happened to Penn State because you're going to have fans. The fans are going to be calling for Drew Allar no matter what. Now they're really going to be. And they're going to overlook and I will admit, I will be the first fan who at times will do this. I'm going to overlook that great drive by Clifford at the end where the composure, that senior leadership kicked in and he helped lead Penn State down to the game-winning score. But yeah, it's like you said, it gives you a lot of confidence in what's come next. And I do think this season, in some ways, it's weird to say because this is a good football team. This is a football team that could win 9 or 10 games and not be a stunner. But in a lot of ways, this season is about building for next season because I think 2023 is the year things can really start to get fun again in Happy Valley. And I think a big part of that is going to be Drew Allure. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Like you said, hopefully next week against Ohio, he can get 2 or 3 series with Penn State way out in front, let him run the offense a little bit, let us see that arm talent. But, yeah, I think the long-term future of Penn State's offense is in very good hands with Drew Allure.
Yeah, Dominic. Yeah, I think Marty and I and others were in the Slack channel. We're saying that we had completely lost faith in Cliff, and of course, this is before he led that game-winning drive. But I mean, he definitely did not look 100% in the second half. I mean, there's no way a Cliff that's 100% is horribly misthrowing on Mitchell Tinsley like that, which ends up in a devastating pick 6. So, I mean, I guess we're going to keep seeing Cliff until, I mean, this is kind of what baffled me too. I mean, because you figured, okay, well, you got Drew Hour, you even got Christian Villa behind him. I mean, you got some legit quarterback depth now, as we saw for our series, and yet here they were. They kept, throwing Cliff back in there, and it worked this time. But another game down the stretch, they may not work out the way they want it to. So, like I said, Marty, it's gonna. I guess we have to get ready for people screaming for Drew Hour even more now that we've seen him in action already. But come next year, at least I would think that job is probably Drew Hour's to lose, and if there's anything like we saw tonight, I think the future is bright for the offense, at least in that sense. So moving on to the defensive side of the ball now, there was definitely a ton of hype, especially on the defensive line, that secondary. And I'll say the secondary, man, how many, just like with the receivers dropping catches, I mean, how many interceptions they drop? I lost count, man. I don't know about you, but man, holy cow. I kept thinking that would come back to bite Penn State. Thankfully, it didn't. Got to say the pass rush was kind of disappointing, although, to your credit, Chop Robinson came up with a huge sack to end the game. But, part of it, I guess, is maybe that we talked about it before we hit record, but Aiden O'Connell, that Purdue passing attack, they're all about, you get rid of that ball as quickly as you can, like within, like a split second. Like you don't drop back 5 steps, wait 3 to 4 seconds to find somebody. I mean, it's just, probably one read throw. So that, and of course, when you have a linebacking core that's clearly was a weak link tonight. I mean, Curtis Jacobs was probably the only starter out there I felt any real confidence in. And, and Abdul Carter coming in too, unfortunately, was played like one play maybe, and then got called for a real BS targeting, with frankly one of the worst targeting calls I've ever seen. He was simply just going to try to recover a fumble. He went and he ended up his helmet ended up hitting a Purdue player's already in the ground, his helmet. But if you look at the replay, clearly he's trying to dive for the ball. He was going with his shoulder, and his helmet just happens to collide. I thought they were gonna not call it targeting, but just that still baffles me. And again, I thought and that actually ended up leading to Purdue scored a touchdown out of that. So it kind of affected momentum for the moment there. But the defense as a whole, it seemed at times it just seemed disappointing, but then again, maybe having Purdue as your first opponent wasn't ideal for a new coordinator. But on the other hand, you've also mentioned this as well. That's and you can get into this, I suppose. But that D line, as talented as they are, it was pretty rusty.
Yeah, the defensive line, you look at PJ Mustafer, had not played since October of last year. Adisa Isaac had not played since 2020. Chop Robinson, you mentioned, was the sacked end of the game. This was his first career game as a full-time hand of the dirt defensive end. Hakeem Beamon had not played since 2020. I think this defensive line long term is not just going to be okay. I think this defensive line will be really, really damn good. I think it'll be a strength of the team when it's all said and done. But I think it will take time to get there. You know, you had guys who we mentioned not played a lot of football in the last year, sometimes longer. They're going to be rusty. And I'm not worried about the defensive line. I'm not worried about the secondary. I think for the most part, Penn State's defense was okay tonight. You know, they gave up 31 points. Well, 7 of them came off a pick six. You mentioned the Abdul Carter targeting, which was just a horrible call. Like, and I said this on Twitter at the time. I'm not trying to sound like some mouth breathing knuckle dragger, but man, if you don't want kids to be physical and fast and violent to the football, go ref soccer, go ref ping pong. Like football, it's a physical, violent sport. The whistle was never blown. For all Abdul Carter known, that could have been a fumble. He led with his shoulder. He hit the Purdue player in the shoulder, and he was playing the ball. That being called targeting was just complete BS in my opinion. It was just horrible call, and just I don't know. Like I said, if you're an official and you don't want to officiate a game where kids are gonna be fast and violent to the ball, go officiate soccer, go officiate ping pong, go find something else to do with your time, because football it's a violent sport. It is what it is. But anyway, I digress. I do think that linebacker depth is a concern. We saw tonight that series where Curtis Jacobs got knocked out and Abdul Carter was not available to come in for him. I don't think it's a coincidence Purdue went out and scored. I also thought it was cool to see when Jacobs was leaving the field, who was the first player to come out and greet him? Abdul Carter. I think Abdul Carter has a very, very bright future at Penn State. When you're a linebacker at Penn State and they give you number 11, when they give you the sticks, you got a bright future. So I think Carter in the long run will be a very good player for Penn State. But yeah, I think the defense, all in all, played well. For the most part, when Manny Diaz and his group needed to get a stop, they did. And one thing with Manny Diaz, I will say, is when you see a defense as aggressive as Manny Diaz, you're going to get beat for big plays from time to time, but the turnovers offset that. Look, right before halftime, Purdue hits a big play. They're in scoring position. What happens next? Zakee Wheatley forces a fumble. Joey Porter Jr. recovers. Penn State goes down and scores. We saw the ability for that. We saw the ability for Penn State to get stops when they need to. I still think Manny Diaz will be just fine as defense coordinator. And I think one thing that gets overlooked in this game also with the defense, other than C.J. Stroud, Aiden O'Connell might be the best quarterback they play all season. This was a very good quarterback. And to tie back to Ohio State, outside of Ryan Day, Jeff Braun might be the best play caller they play all season. This is a very good Purdue offense. This is a Purdue offense that's going to hang points on most teams. So the fact Penn State held them to 24 points offensively, when we take away the pick six, and of those 24, you have 3 points came off of a dropped, what should have been pick six by Joey Porter Jr., and 7 that came off of just the horrible targeting call in Abdul Carter. There's definitely a timeline out there, where Joey Porter Jr. hauls in that pick six and where Abdul Carter is not called for targeting, and Purdue scores like 17 points tonight. So I think all the defense played well. And like you mentioned, Tim, we talked about this before we came on the air. The Purdue offense, it's quick hit stuff. Like, you have the best pass rush in the country. If you have a quarterback who's one or two step drop and dumps the ball off, you're not going to get sacked. It's just not going to happen. The one Purdue had to drop back and pass the ball, Penn State's defense got pressure. We talked about the Chop Robinson sack, but I think maybe an even bigger play than that. On Purdue's penultimate possession, we saw Aiden O'Connell first down on that drive get sacked by Jonathan Sutherland for loss of 7. That may have been as big a play of anything, because that put Purdue way behind the sticks, put them in a position where they had to punt the ball. Penn State, to their credit, got the ball. Sean Clifford marched it right down the field, as we talked about, and scored. So I do think Penn State's defense tonight, they had some hiccups, as you would expect for game one of a defensive coordinator going up against a good offense. But ultimately, when they had to get stops, they did. And I have no problems with the way the Penn State defense played tonight. I still think Manny Diaz will be just fine. And yeah, I think Manny Diaz is a good defense coordinator, and I think they'll be okay. This is a team that they faced a very good offense. And like I said, when they had to get stops, they did. And that's what matters. You can give up points in between, but when you need to stop to swing momentum, we need to stop to get the ball back to take the lead, we need to stop to hold your lead, and you can get those stops. Ultimately, that's what matters for a defense.
Kind of brings us to a comment here. How you feel about Manny's scheme now, boys? Get ready to absolutely hate the void zone blitz. Never heard of a void zone blitz. But yeah, I mean, I guess, jury's still out, but they did come up when they absolutely had to. They came up with stops. They came up with, especially in that final drive, they came up with a sack to end the game. They broke up some passes. I just wish they, Joey Porter Jr. or Keaton Ellis had come down with an interception, especially Keaton Ellis, because that was on the final drive. Could have just ended it right there. But, again, it's water under the bridge because Penn State won anyway. So, but, going back, Mark, I guess just real quick before we get into that, just a reminder, blackshadarius.com, so where you can find our work. We already have our 3 takeaways and our game recap up right now if you go to the site. Marty, I don't know what you'll be putting up. I'll have my position grades up tomorrow sometime after I get some sleep after this. You can also follow us on Twitter at BSD Tweet. So check that out. And of course, if you haven't already and like what you see, smash that like and subscribe button. So let's say this was a game that had 7 lead changes. Sorry, 7. I can see that. There we go. 7 lead changes. And just seemed like a momentum shifting play. And you mentioned late in the first half, Penn State's up 14-10. Purdue's driving. Aiden O'Connell's hitting receivers in stride. It seems like at the very least, they're going to kick a field goal. Penn State will be up 1, or maybe they score a touchdown. They're up 4 at the half. But Zakee Wheatley forcing that fumble, getting that fumble recovery. And then a couple plays later, Cliff hits Brent Strange down the sideline for a touchdown. And all of a sudden, it's 21-10 Penn State going to the half. And, at that point, I'm thinking like, all right, this is better than I thought it would be. They're in business. And then, of course, you see Cliff's on the sidelines to start the second half. Drew Auer comes in. An Auer has Mose look good, but then Cliff comes back in and clearly does not look like he did in the first half. And things you're kind of getting that deja vu from the Iowa game last year. You just feel the game slipping away. But unlike that Iowa game, of course, it just seems out of nowhere. When you least expected it, Cliff just came up. I guess when he absolutely had to, he came up with a couple clutch drives, clutch throws, like to Kendrick Smith for a touchdown. And then even after the pick 6, which at the time seemed like, that was the backbreaker. He goes on to lead that game-winning drive in the final minute. So I kind of liken it to, in basketball, you have it's like if Steph Curry just, can't hit the broadside of a barn. Like maybe he goes 2 for 20 shooting threes on a night. But you know what? One of those 2 shots he makes turns out to be like the game-winning 3. So maybe a rough night at times, but you know what? You see that stat line going around though. On paper, he's 20 for 37, 4 touchdown passes, also ran for a touchdown. So he accounted for five. He accounted for all five of Penn State's touchdowns tonight. So you do have to tip your cap to Cliff where it's due. As much as you and I were criticized and others were criticizing him in the Slack channel, and of course, don't get me started on Penn State Twitter. I mean, that was a crap show. I know this is an after dark show, but I'm still trying to keep things PG on here. But Penn State Twitter was definitely melting down when Cliff was struggling, and after seeing what Drew Aller was capable of. Marty, just just walk us through like how you were feeling throughout the game, just with all the momentum swings going on.
I mean, like I said earlier, when I never felt worried in the first half at all, even when Purdue was leading. And then when Penn State made 21-10 in halftime, I'm like, all right, they got this. They're going to cruise to victory. Remember one of those games, Purdue makes it, pull within 7, pull within 5. I never truly feel close. And yeah, true. Obviously, that's not what happened when Purdue took a lead late in the fourth quarter, and just when Purdue, even when Purdue made it 28-24, I was not feeling good. Largely because Penn State's offense could not do anything at all, it seemed at the time. And then when the Boilermakers got the interception off Sean Clifford, it made it 31-28. It was like, oh boy, here we go. We've seen this before. And like you said, Tim, that Iowa game last year is a great comparison. I saw a lot of people make that comparison. To the extent I felt it, it was like, oh shit, here we go again. On the road, Big Ten West opponent, you get a double-digit lead, you make it seem like you're going to just absolutely blow them out, roll, and next thing you know, you're in for a dogfight and you wind up losing. And for a lot of the night, I didn't think the way it was going to go. And to the credit of the Penn State offense, it did not. They rallied, they got the win, and that's what matters. They're 1-0. It wasn't pretty, but it was a victory. And you get ready for Ohio next week, like we talked about. Might be the easiest game on the schedule. And then you're with that trip to Auburn. If you can go down to Auburn and win, you're probably looking at a 5-0 start. And yeah, you're right there at that point. But yeah, it's weird to me because if you're a Penn State fan, I can understand the optimism right now. I can also understand the pessimism right now. It's a strange time to be a Penn State fan, but hey, we're 1-0. We're 1-0. Let's enjoy it until next Saturday.
Indeed. So looking ahead real quick, you got Ohio U next week. We've said before when we did our schedule preview a few weeks ago, we both agreed this was the easiest game on the schedule, and I still maintain that it's the easiest game on the schedule. What do you hope to see next week against the Bobcats?
I hope next week more than anything we see the running game get going with a little more consistency. Like I said, I don't think the running game was as bad as it looked tonight. I think they finished the game averaging like 3.6 yards per carry. I don't think it was that bad, especially with Singleton Allen, the freshman. But yeah, that's my big hope for next week is we see the offense with the running game get going with a little bit more efficiency than we saw tonight. Because I do think if you're going to compete in the Big Ten this season, if you're going to win 10 games, if you're going to potentially beat a Michigan or an Ohio State, you need your rushing attack to be better than it was tonight. So yeah, I hope we see the running game get going against an inferior Ohio team. And if we don't, I think it's similar to last year against, say, Villanova. We all look back to the Villanova game last year. Penn State won easily, but they averaged what? I think like 2 yards a carry. Ran for like 90 yards on like 40 carries or something crazy like that. So, yeah, you just want to see the running game get going and give you some confidence because, man, I tell you what, if we head into Big Ten play in a couple weeks with Northwestern and that bye week in the Michigan, and the running game is still not going, Penn State fans, rightfully so, are going to be up in arms about it, and they're going to be looking for answers.
Absolutely. I would hope, if they can establish a run game against Ohio next week, and it'll be a promising sign because I can remember last year, even during that 5-0 start, I saw some red flags when they struggled to pound the rock against Villanova, an FCS team. And, sure enough, when later in the season, when they needed to be able to run the ball, they couldn't do it. And so hopefully, again, let's see more. Obviously, it looks like, even though we would wish to see the freshmen exclusively play, I mean, Kevon Lee is going to be a part of the offense. And, with how he caught the winning touchdown pass, frankly, he deserves to be part of the rotation still. So it looks like a three-headed monster we've got going there between the two freshmen and Kevon Lee. Devin Ford seems like he's going to be a special teams guy, and seems okay with that. Otherwise, he was a guy I thought would have portaled by now, but he clearly, whatever role he's taken on the team, he seems to be all right with it. So there's that. Just looking around the college football real quick, we had a crazy one in Pittsburgh where Pitt took down West Virginia in the renewal of the Backyard Brawl series, 38-31. Mark, I don't know if you caught any of this game, but I caught brief glimpses of it. It seemed like a wild one, and came down to to the final minutes. So it's nice to see these old rivalry games that were eliminated due to all the realignment come back. And Penn State next year begins a home and home with West Virginia, which personally I'm looking forward to, having remembered the last one that was played when I was, a kid in 1992. And, what do you think of all, I mean, and then you got the realignment coming with, USC, UCLA joining the Big Ten. It's just, do you just feel this is something you just come to accept, and it's just one of these like, well, I guess we'll just have to enjoy these moments while they last?
Yeah, to an extent, it was, from what I gathered, I was watching the Backyard Brawl a lot before the game started. I'm someone who, I live in West Central PA, to where it's more Pitt country out this way than Mid-State country. And I know a lot of people around me were excited for, today at work, the school I teach at, pretty much it's pretty evenly split. Everyone's either a Penn State fan or a Pitt fan. So we all agreed that, hey, Friday afternoon, all of our kids will benefit because we're all going to be dragging butt tomorrow between the Pitt game and the Penn State game. But yeah, I would have loved to have seen Pitt lose just out of loathness for that program, but it was a great game. It's what you want to see. A lot of people talk about Pitt and Penn State, but I will go to bat all day long that the Backyard Brawl is a better rivalry than Pitt and Penn State is for a lot of reasons. So it was cool to see it reinvigorated tonight. It was cool to see it be a close game. I think that does a lot of good for college football. I'm not someone who's like anti-conference expansion like a lot of people are, but I will say the one negative of that I feel has come along is losing the Backyard Brawl, losing games like that. But hey, great win for Pitt. More credit to them. I will still continue to root against Pitt in every game they have left the season. I hope they go 1-11. But hey, it was a good game. It was a great college football game. It was definitely a game where if Penn State was not playing tonight, I would have been super invested into it just as a college football fan because of the back and forth, and Pitt hang on for a 7-point victory at the end. But yeah, great game. Awesome college footballness. And, hopefully what we got tonight between Pitt and West Virginia and Penn State and Purdue, if that's a sign of things to come as a whole for college football this year, we're going to stay for a great season.
Indeed. And just looking at the rest of what we got for this marathon college football slate. It is Labor Day weekend after all. I'm looking forward, of course, to the big one this weekend. I'm talking, of course, about Virginia Tech and Old Dominion, the James Franklin Bowl between new Virginia Tech head coach Brett Pry and former offensive coordinator Ricky Ronnie at Old Dominion. Should be a very interesting matchup just for us Penn State fans to watch. But for real, the other big games, of course, you got Oregon and Georgia playing in Atlanta, which is like game. You've got, of course, Notre Dame and Ohio State Saturday night. Fowler and Herbstreit calling the shots there on ESPN or ABC, I guess. And then Sunday you got Sunday night you got Florida State, LSU, and the Superdome in New Orleans. Then Labor Day night, Clemson heads down to Georgia Tech. Marty, which game would you say which game or games would you say you're looking forward to watching the most?
I'm excited for Notre Dame, Ohio State, 2 versus 5. That said, I think there's a real possibility that Ohio State wins. I think with ease. Oregon and Georgia, another exciting game. Because one thing with Oregon, when Mario Cristobal was there, he recruited the trenches like an SEC school. There's a lot of physicality there. I think they will be able to be physical, Georgia. But I think maybe my most anticipated game of the weekend, and it's a game that's going to talk about a lot, is Utah and Florida, which I understand. You have 2 top 25 caliber programs. Utah, the SEC, or was it Pac-12, excuse me, a potential playoff team with the Utes. I'm very intrigued to see where Utah and Florida go at the Swamp. And, I think that's just a really intriguing game. I can see Utah going down there winning easily. I can see Florida pulling the upset. So, yeah, but what's most important, and, I talked about this the other day with a couple of friends of mine. If there's one thing the 2020 season taught me, it was to really appreciate this. Like, if you are a true college football junkie like we are, Tim, appreciate it, because you never know when you're going to lose it. And I'm so excited to have my Saturday afternoon just parked in front of my TV. Like, I'm excited to wake up Saturday morning, fire up my Blackstone, make some breakfast, watch game day, and watch games all day long. And yeah, I can't wait for it to get started. But yeah, I think Florida and Utah is the game that really intrigues me. I think Notre Dame and Ohio State, you have to mention it. And I can see the Buckeyes winning easily. And Georgia and Oregon, I think the point spread in Georgia and Oregon is like 17.5 points. That's a big number. I don't think the Dogs lose it, but I don't think they win by 17.5 either. Because again, like I said, I think Oregon is recruited very well in the trenches. They can out physical them if they need to be. But yeah, it should be a great Saturday kickoff college football season, as always is. And it will be. One thing I will say, as much as I dislike the Thursday night openers, especially in conference play on the road, it will be nice to spend Saturday morning. I will roll out of bed, Penn State already at 1-0, and just be able to enjoy football on Saturday, knowing my Nittany Lions already at 1-0, and just kick my feet up and relax.
Indeed. I think Notre Dame, Ohio State, I'm looking forward to the most. That's not just because, I have family that are Ohio State grads, but I'm intrigued to see if Ohio State can cover. I think the line. What's the line at? I haven't looked at it lately. I think Ohio State's over a 2 touchdown.
Yeah, last I saw, the line was 16.5.
Okay, yeah, it's a little higher than I thought, but I mean, I think Ohio State. I think they have potential to just pummel Notre Dame. It's just, especially if you got an offense like the one they have on paper, and if that defense, kind of like we talked about Penn State's O-line, if that defense is serviceable enough under Jim Knowles, I really think they can boat race Notre Dame in prime time. But we shall see. Anyway, I got time for a few questions here. So before we do that, just a reminder. On the main channel, the Voice College Football channel, Mark Rogers himself will have his live call-in show every Saturday night, 11:30 Eastern time. So, banner right there. So
and check it out. The last 2 seasons, I've been on the call-in time we're doing Saturday night. So hey, if you enjoy us, you might see me on it.
Yes, you might hear a drunk Marty calling in at 11:30 on Saturday night to Mark. I'm kidding, but or maybe I'm not.
Some weekends you are, some weekends not.
Depends on how the game goes. When's LeVar going to get number 11 retired? Frankly, I hope he never does. frankly, I think he likes the fact that linebackers deemed worthy enough rock the number 11 jersey. So you thought Micah Parsons, Navarro Bowman. I think did Brandon Bell rock 11? I can't remember.
Yeah, his senior, the Big Ten championship year, Brandon Bell was number 11.
Okay, yeah. So Abdul Carter got the number 11, which should tell you something, even though he's not starting at the moment. I mean, frankly, the way the other linebackers looked tonight, besides Curtis Jacobs, the starting ones, I would not be shocked to see Abdul Carter by mid-season being a starter out there. It's, unfortunately, we knew it was gonna be the weak link going into the season, and Purdue seemed to prove that right this season. I mean, tonight. So hopefully, it's not too detrimental. Let's see. Well, more of a comment. Penn's not going to beat Michigan this year. Maybe Michigan. I don't know if he's trying to say maybe they'll beat Michigan State, which, yeah, maybe. I don't know. That's not till Thanksgiving weekend.
That's a bold statement. Hey, Michigan, Penn State, Michigan State, three of the best programs in the Big Ten. Might win, you might not. You're really going to live there,
You're not going to beat Michigan this year. I mean, probably not. I mean, it's in Ann Arbor. The only time I've seen in recent memory we've seen Penn State win in Ann Arbor was that weird COVID year.
COVID year, yeah.
Which, Michigan was also affected by that COVID year as badly as Penn State seemed to be. So, there's that. But, I mean, the last time before that they won in Ann Arbor was, I think, when Rich Rodriguez was coaching them. So, probably not beating Michigan. Michigan State, yeah. Who knows? Who knows what the team's going to look like by Thanksgiving weekend, both Penn State and Michigan State. Injuries happen. Got other people who we're not talking about right now emerge, become studs. So we'll see. Dominic wants to know, what do you think about the O-line? And we touched upon this earlier, Marty. I mean, I guess they looked better compared to the end of last year. Pass protection was okay. They only gave up one sack. Run blocking seemed all right. I guess you'd like to see that improve, though. I really felt there were a couple times where Singleton just got tackled by the ankles, and maybe if the line had just given him another split second, he could have just broken one. But hopefully,
I didn't think the offensive line was all that bad. You mentioned Singleton. His first carry tonight, it was Penn State's second drive of the game. They started down 3. He was literally one missed tackle away from going 97 yards for a score in his first collegiate carry. Oh, excuse me. But yeah, I think the offensive line played okay. None of things considered. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely. I think right tackle continues to be a major problem. I mean, Caden Wallace had between holdings and false starts, 3 or 4 penalties tonight. So I think right tackle is a major problem for Penn State. But yeah, I think the offensive line overall took a step in the right direction tonight.
Certainly. Got Dustin. I couldn't quite decipher as though Cliff, an NFL quarterback. I don't think Frank was best coach for him, but could NFL talent be bestowed upon Cliff? Frankly, I don't think any coach is gonna make Cliff any better than he is. I think what you're seeing Cliff at is, especially you saw the first 5 games last year. I mean, that's like the best you're going to see him. He's, he can certainly be a decent quarterback, serviceable one when he's healthy. But I just don't. I mean, he's not an NFL talent. I mean, there's a reason why he's already busy starting up his own NIL business. I mean, that's going to be what he goes pro in after he's done with this season.
Yeah, I was looking. It's a weirdly positioned question. You mentioned, but could NFL talent bestow upon, like, you take any college quarterback and put them behind the NFL offensive line with NFL weapons, they're going to be better. not to go off topic, but it's one of those like ad nauseum things when people, oh, could Alabama beat the Jacksonville Jaguars? No, they couldn't. If Alabama played the worst team in the NFL, they would lose by 60. So, to say, could Cliff be better if you surrounded by NFL talent? Well, yeah, every freaking quarterback in the world would be. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I have been as critical of Sean Clifford as anybody. I was extremely critical of him tonight. I felt up to that final drive, he did not play well, especially the pick six, which was just an absolutely god awful throw. But to Sean Clifford's credit, when Penn State needed him most, he stepped up, he made the throws, he led the march down the field, and he hit Kevon Lee for the game-winning touchdown. So, could Penn State do better than Sean Clifford? Absolutely. Could Penn State do a hell of a lot worse than Sean Clifford? Again, absolutely. So I think Clifford's a quarterback who you feel comfortable that he could get you 9 or 10 wins. Are you comfortable Clifford could lead you to the playoff and beyond? Maybe not, but you're definitely comfortable in Sean Clifford's ability to get you to 9 or maybe even double-digit wins.
Indeed. One last question. What do you think about Pitt and Tennessee next weekend? To quote one Lane Kiffin, get your popcorn ready. Both teams can light up the scoreboard, especially Tennessee. I think they put up the scores tonight. Looks like they put up 59 on Ball State. I'm trying to pull it up here. Yeah, 59-10 over Ball State. It's interesting to see Joe Milton find a second life at Tennessee and Josh Heupel's system because he certainly looked lost at Michigan before transferring out. So good on him. And of course, Tennessee looking for revenge after losing last year to Pitt. Should be an interesting one. I'll be watching that. And on that note, Marty, I know we've been keeping you up way past your bedtime on a school night. But totally worth it being a zombie tomorrow. Am I right?
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, it'll be nice. It was funny too. Today we're in class, and I work in special education, so there's 2 of us in the classroom, and my behavioral health specialist in my classroom, Mr. Glessner, he even told the students, he's like, oh, Mr. Leaf's gonna be tired tomorrow. He'll be watching the Penn State game. So hopefully my kids are ready for it. It's a Friday. Thankfully, at my school, my students get a half day every Friday, so they'll be out of the door by 1:00, and that includes getting lunch at 12 and gym class at 12:30, so I can kind of coast in the day. But yeah, they're Penn State's 1-0. That's what matters right now, and it might be 1:30 in the morning on the East Coast almost, but I will be dragging astronomical amounts of butt at work tomorrow, but it'll be worth it because Penn State's 1-0. It was not a win that a lot of times looked like they weren't going to have it, but they pulled it out, and more credit to them. And one thing I will say before we go off the air, I do think this is a game the last 2 years, whether it was Iowa last year, Indiana 2 years ago, this was a game the last 2 years Penn State finds a way to lose. To their credit, tonight they found a way to win. And I think that alone can go a long way for the growth and for the development of this football game.
Indeed. Like I said, they got the win. Perhaps despite their best efforts at times, but we'll gladly take the win. I'll take a win with all these things to fix as opposed to a loss in the same circumstances. And hopefully just over this next month, or especially next week against Ohio U, before you go on the road again to play Auburn, and they can clean up some things and hopefully get another huge road win 2 weeks from now. But per usual, Marty and I will be back next Saturday post game after the Ohio U game. So that'll be a noon kickoff on ABC from the top of my head. ABC or ESPN, one of the channels on the ESPN family networks. But it should be a hopefully less stressful one. And on that note, Marty, I'm going to let you go now, so you go get some rest. And to all of you who tuned in, thank you very much. Once again, I'll put that banner up. real quick. BlackShoeDiaries.com. You can find us there. There's the banner there, BlackShoeDiaries.com. Follow us on Twitter at BSD Tweets. Once again, Tim Aiden, Marty Leap. Thank you very much for those of you, especially who are anywhere but the West Coast, staying up past your bedtimes to watch this. Once again, hit the like and subscribe on the Penn State channel, especially. We're still trying to grow that. We've gotten over 500 followers now. We're 512. So let's see if we can get that to 550 by the time October rolls around. That's something to shoot for, Marty. 550.
Yeah, sounds good to me. If you're looking for that quality Penn State coverage, especially after games, we got you covered all around, especially after games. Yeah, come check us out. Tell your friends, tell your family, spread the word.
Indeed. Anyway, we're both about to get some shut eye here, so enjoy the opening weekend of college football, everybody, and we will see you all next Saturday after the Ohio game.